So the way that the Buddha frames his entire teaching, they put front and center what was his awakening, what awakened him, what's the truths, the natural laws that were the keys to his ultimate freedom. Uh, the central point there central piece that one needs to understand, know, learn from, get to know. Is their pain or suffering. And not our pain and not our suffering, but just pain, just suffering. In various times, people encounter suffering. And this was what he was constantly pointing at. Don't. That's what's ultimately going to liberate. So there's different ways to approach our pain that are, you'd call, skillful. Eventually, when we get ready, we can look straight at the suffering. We can go directly into our experience. We can reflect on all the pain inherent in life. And let it land, let it be able to understand it in its full breadth. But sometimes we're not completely ready to face suffering. It's just too painful. It's just too much on our plate. We just don't have enough energy, enough strength, motivation, will, good feeling, resilience to be able to face it directly. And so for a lot of people, it's not maybe feasible, it's not possible, it's not tractable to jump right into the depths of our pain and our suffering. It takes a lot of building up that internal strength, building up that internal resilience, spiritual power, strength, focus, awareness, faith, energy, wisdom, to know how to properly digest that pain. Learn from it. See the causes. See the way out. It takes reality as these. The ideas aren't hard to understand, but the practice of it, the experience of it, it takes a lot of spiritual strength. He gave us many tools for building that spiritual strength when we know we aren't ready to take on that massive battle. that massive, that painful experience and see our way through it. And that spiritual strength fundamentally comes from, you could call it doing good and not doing bad. Skillfully relating to our world, our situations, our circumstances, our lives. You could call it not sowing the seeds of peace and happiness and pleasure and strength, and not sowing the seeds of pain and suffering. Fundamentally, it takes a lot of preparation. For those that have already done that preparation, they've lived the lifetime of goodness, not done harmful actions. They've used their time well. They might be ready for that deeper learning experience and have the internal strength to be able to withstand the painful journey through reality. Of our experience. Have the wisdom to relate to the pleasure in a detached way. But for many, they need to sort of build those muscles, build that resilience, build that sort of inner strength, inner health, inner resilience, inner spiritual power. To be able to endure and accept, forgive. So in that space of doing goodness, it's fundamentally anything good, anything probably called punya, merits or rewards. It's anything that creates this wholesome fruit. And in that class is any type of good, type of generosity, selfless service, kind words, and intentions, passionate intentions. Even this wholesome balance and inner happiness and peace from starting to settle, to dwell in that calm and peaceful sense of goodness. But it could be anything. It could be anything from kind words, saying, wishing someone well, intention, recent act of generosity. Sometimes for people that have trouble accessing kindness inside themselves, generosity is more accessible. They're able, even if they have a lot of blocks on their internal world, they're still able to do kind things. There's feed the birds at the park or offer something to someone who needs it, someone who doesn't have very much. Daily kind acts to our friends and family, co-workers. Could be anything. The intention is what matters, and the more habitual the intention becomes, the more strong that muscle gets to wish people well. It's not that it's there all the time unless one develops it to a great degree. But even if you just get one moment, one act of kindness, one kind word, one intention of wishing well, it's creating a resonance with a very powerful force that has the ability to offer us a sense of happiness and stability. It's kind of like magic. It's this sort of unseen force that normally we don't pay attention to. So if we only think of the world as a material thing, it's pleasure and joy that comes from goodness. It seems to come out of nowhere. It'd be more accurate to say it comes out of everywhere. It comes from attuning to a frequency that we all have access to. And it has this potential to, like people say, that like charge your battery, get rest, feel more energetic. The kindness has that potential as well. We can generate the ability to resonate on that frequency and start to get familiar with it and dwell there more and more frequently. And it, in addition to this sort of function of fueling our spiritual power, it has this another function of smoothness. And it just makes everything tend to go smoother in our lives, because that's how it feels. It's a smooth state. It's an expansive state. It's the quality of it. It's like velvet, soft. And so, if people are agitated, and one can sustain this state of kindness, they want to get there. They can almost start to feel the good feeling that comes from it, and inside, even if at a conscious level they can't register, at a subconscious level they feel like, oh, that's good, because it feels good and it feels stable. And it's much more pleasurable than the agitation, the anger, fear. So if they can pause long enough to know what it feels like, they want to change. They naturally want to come out of their anger. They naturally want to come out of their fear. They naturally want to come out of their sensual desire. Because at a experiential level, it just feels more fulfilling, more rewarding, more stable, consistent. One's completely infatuated with the things of the world, one might miss it because it's softer, it's more subtle. Overstimulated, it's hard to even register that it's there. But the more one gets familiar with it and can know it in contrast to the sensual desire, the sensual pleasures, the sights, the sounds, the smells, the tastes, the touch, the stimuli, the pleasure driven by stimuli. The more one sort of wants to live there more. And it takes a lot of remembering at first, because habitually, a lot of times we've been giving all our attention to the external world, putting all the emphasis on the external world. Haven't paid much attention to these subtle experiential states. But whereas the pleasure driven by stimuli, by the sense experiences, gives one a temporary high of the body, high of the flesh. And it doesn't last, and we're sort of left right where we started. As soon as that stimuli is gone, nothing's changed. Whatever pain we were looking for relief from is still there. And if we expended all of this energy on trying to attain that stimuli, we don't have that energy for our cultivation of more wholesome states. It leaves us more deficient than before we started. It's like filling up on junk food. And not only do you have to process all the junk food, but you don't have the power to digest the nutrients that you actually need. To get those nutrients to invest in. Kindness is maybe it's one of the more accessible ways, but it could be anything. It could be any small act, small intention of goodwill. But it also can take the form of starting to be more and more pure in our morality. In some ways, it's even more important. Because while the kindness is sowing seeds of pleasure and softness and stability, the being very meticulous about one's morality, its moral standards, one's values, one's principles. It's the equivalent of being very careful not to sow any seeds of pain, of heavy, onerous, weighty, tension, inner conflict, regret, remorse. It's like a physical weight weighing you down emotionally. And so So the more pure we are on that level, or there's nothing to hide from, no one to avoid, nothing to be ashamed of. Nothing to defend. You've gone through the world harmless, doing any harm to anyone, living gently in the world. It's just clean inside. The Buddha often referred to kilesa or sankilesa or akilesa. Most basically translate as dirtiness, it's impurities. It would describe this internal state of being clean of any dirtiness. Use that word exactly, that cleanliness, that purity that happens when we just haven't done anything to soil ourselves, soil our morality, soil our psyche. Psyche's just clean. Nothing to fear. So, physical level, we started with killing living beings, stealing, taking something that's not given, sexual misconduct, doing wrong sexually. So one can at least maintain that standard, even with respect to animals, not killing any living being, so much as a mosquito. Just go through the world, sort of treating everyone as one referred to in Thailand, brothers and sisters in birth, aging, and death. So, as other beings, just trying to go through their world, survive, make the best of it, seek out some pleasure and peace and happiness. So going through the world and not wanting to deprive them of that life. At some level, they're still holding. Not stealing anything from anyone. Very respectful of people's properties, and not to take anything that might belong to someone else. Just going through the world respectful of other people's belongings. Being very also how one acts sexually is to be very respectful of people's relationships. And people that are underage, that are still dependent on their parents, who have taken monastic vows, you want to be very respectful of not harming people sexually in any way. Tries to be very restrained in one's sexual behavior, and so as far as it doesn't harm anyone. You need to hide from. I think you need to worry about or regret. Even more difficult than that, but sometimes the more difficult aspects are also the ones that are They involve adjusting our behavior, our lifestyle, our relationships. So when trying to behave in a very moral way with speech, if refinement at the level of body is the first coarsest layer of trying to maintain a moral standard, the refinement of speech is a slightly more subtle standard, but still absolutely essential to make sure we aren't harming, even if we're not harming someone physically or another being physically, to make sure we're not harming them with our speech as well, which is even harder. It requires more attention, more meticulousness. But we come out feeling cleaner. It's like most people have had the experience of having a conversation, maybe a gossipy conversation, or maybe a critical conversation. When it comes out feeling bad about it, or even more grossly, if one tells an intentional lie, the average person will feel like, oh, that's wrong. Sometimes people won't feel anything, but mostly, at least my intuition is that on some subconscious level, that's still registering, and there's still some regret, there's some remorse. Even if at a conscious intellectual level, there's no registering of that feeling, but our subconscious still knows, still feels the regret, the remorse, and the inner conflict that goes into telling an intentional lie. In addition to that, it's not only we're deluding another person, but a lot of times the more we compromise on the truth, the more we delude ourselves just in the process. We lose our bearings for what's reality and what's not reality. We have to constantly distort reality to whether it's make ourselves look good, or to get what we want, or to avoid what we don't want, or to avoid difficulties, fear, things we fear, pain, situation. The more our view of the world is getting distorted, and it gets especially distorted when we start to habitually tell lies, the more we start to lose the ability to register what's true and what's not, what's real and what's not. And if we don't have a good map of reality, we're slowly but surely losing hope of being able to not just transcend it, but understand the consequences of our actions. And so we lose this sense of inner honesty with the results of our actions and the truth of our views. So the more, and also we lose the ability to be able to recognize when other people are telling the truth, because we're so habitually fudging on the truth, sometimes outright lying, that we can't tell the difference when someone else is lying. We've lost that inner connection that tells us, like, oh, that's wrong, that feels bad. Or the care and attention that it takes to speak only the truth. Sort of lost an appreciation for what that is. And so we walk through the world very blind to that whole layer of awareness that goes into knowing, like, lying feels bad. There's always some avoidance or desire or delusion or self or ego that goes into lying. And it feels bad because I just told that person something that I knowingly deceived them. true. So they can't trust me. You start to lose the ability to trust yourself or know what's real. Similarly, the more one tries to speak words that are conducive to unity and try to not speak words that are conducive to division, maliciousness, the more one's taking that step towards purity, taking that step towards unity, towards wanting to bring two together, wanting to see everyone who's suffering to come out of their suffering, wanting everyone to work together as a community, as a team, friends, family, trying to help things work out, bring people together. More that eventually one finds oneself surrounded by that type of person. Eschews, avoids malicious or divisive speech. It's just something I don't want to engage in it. And one finds herself more and more distant from those sorts of situations, as well as the regret that that sort of speech comes, the pain. Similarly, coarse words, harsh words, insults, vulgarity. One avoids it, tries to come out of it. One's not feeding into that anger that fuels those words. Just trying to avoid using the words that one speaks habitually in anger, and trying to use words that are more direct, more honest, more kind, more gentle, more civil. To be very, very careful about the words one chooses. It's difficult. It requires a lot of being comfortable not speaking, so that you can choose the words when speaking with intention. Similarly, idle chatter is just talk without a purpose. Normally, idle chatter is just to fill the space, attract attention to itself, to distract from what's going on inside. And in that filling of that space, that's what it does. It distracts from what's going on inside. It distracts us from the more important things. It distracts us from more substantive, purposeful speech that serves us, that serves others, serves some beneficial purpose for all beings. So if one has that standard of body and action and body and speech, one's already gone a long way towards making sure it's not doing harm at a physical or verbal level. Okay. Go through one's life with just that pure acts of body and speech. Normally one will stand out, because there'll be just certain conversations that a person won't engage in. And whenever they get opportunities to engage in a more substantive, fruitful, kind, beneficial conversation or acts, they'll be more eager to, because it's so hard to refrain from doing any harm that it's almost like a natural corollary to have this sort of kinship with all the beings in the world. It sort of takes the intentions to restrain oneself from doing any harm. And naturally, it's the states that create that restraint are very similar to the states that are kind and compassionate, feel this kinship with the beings. Doesn't mean that one's sort of necessarily always involved with other beings all the time. It's just that one's going through the world with this sense of harmlessness, sense of well-wishing. Not wanting to do anything to sort of corrupt, distort the environment. There's a high standard, but the more we live it, the more we get comfortable in these wholesome states. I mean, familiar they feel, good they feel. The level of mind. At the very least, the amount of hostility in the world, of covetousness, greed, burning desire for the world, as well as adopting the view, or at least not rejecting the view, that there is goodness in the world. There are consequences of what's good and bad. There are subtle fields and worlds and dimensions beyond our own experience that beings can be reborn in. And there's spiritually advanced beings in the world who've been able to experience these other worlds directly and know them for themselves. The more one believes in this moral fabric of our existence, the more one aligns one's conduct with it, because we can see, okay, you harm people, and then you experience pain. It's just how that field works, that fabric works. So it's not that nobody makes mistakes, but that when we do make mistakes, we do harm people in our acts of body and speech, or other beings, the other beings of body or speech or mind. Dust ourselves off, renew our intention, maybe ask for forgiveness, and renew our intention to try to live up to a moral standard we can feel good about, and whose natural consequence is feeling good, feeling those two parts, one's underwater with suffering and having a difficult time traversing it and working through it and surviving, being able to process it, learn from it. Then the investments we can make, investments that yield that deeper spiritual power we need to be able to withstand, to create this stability inside ourselves, to be able to endure pain patiently, accept the realities, painful suffering, realities of pain or suffering in our world, in our experience, with grace, stability, peace, and detachment, disidentification. But even if one never goes farther, one never builds on that basis, even then, sort of securing that one won't descend, and in the process of enduring this pain and maintaining a moral standard, doing what good one can do along the way, generating wholesome states, generate them. And it's kind of trading out the really painful old karma for peaceful, pleasurable, wholesome, stable new karma. The actions that are being taken just by doing little bits of goodness and refraining from doing anything harmful. Is pure. Is not in that realm of pain. It's only sowing wholesome seeds. It's only sowing pure seeds. Guaranteed that the results of that seed will be either neutral or pleasurable. And so, for those struggling, just hanging on and maintaining a moral standard is sometimes a massive achievement. Because in that pain, a lot of times the tendency comes up very strongly to lash out, to cover it up with sense pleasures, distract oneself. And if one can sit with it and learn from it, grow from it, maintain that moral standard, or even if one can maintain that moral standard without learning from it, without growing from it, with just hanging on and not reacting, that's already a huge step. It's it's sowing the seeds for a more stable base to emerge in the future. One's constantly seeking out sense pleasures or lashing out with hostility, then that basis isn't being created. So at the end of the day, just creating enduring painful circumstances, but also creating seeds for painful circumstances to continue to arise. The more one can restrain oneself from that hostility, restrain from that oneself from that greed or sensual desire, hang on. Once slowly but surely developing that inner strength and stability to be able to endure, to be able to start to see clearly, even in the midst of pain. And the more one does that, the more one is sort of sowing the seeds of goodness, of stability, and strength, purity. And that stability allows us to start to get to know pain. And it might even allow us to develop a more enduring sense of happiness and peace. One's experiencing pain or experiencing pleasure, one can learn from either. The more stable one's internal state, more stable one's internal spiritual happiness and peace. The more one can consciously look at pain, understand it's part of the deal. Physical pain I'm feeling, it's part of having a body. Emotional pain I'm feeling, it's part of getting attached to things. This grief I'm experiencing, holding on to other people, loved ones. Five masses back against the body, the form, feeling, the recognition, the attachments or impulses, perceptions. They're all part of what I'm experiencing. They're all just different painful aspects of this experience. It has pleasure, it has pain, it has neutral, neither pleasure nor pain. And it's all part of the same, more or less, fabric, just vibrating differently. Rising and passing, painful feeling arising and passing, pleasurable feeling arising and passing. Neither pain nor pleasurable feeling arising and passing. The more you get familiar with it, and the more stability one has inside, the more distance one can get from it. One can just start to see this form. Oh, it's just a body. I got born into this body. In the past, I got born into other bodies. Everybody's body just goes back to the earth. It's just earth and water, part. A bit of wind and heat. And come together, fall apart. It's the nature of a body. Feeling, the more you have that space of stability and distance, the more you look at it, okay, this is painful feeling, this is pleasurable feeling, neither pain nor pleasurable feeling. And this is painful feeling of the world, this is pleasure feeling of the world, this is neither pain nor pleasurable feeling of the world. And these are the internal, the spiritual, they're away from the world, they're internal. The internal pleasure, internal pain. It's the same sensations radiating, but it's being caused by a different source. This is the pleasure of kindness, not the pleasure of sentiment. This is the pain of going without the things that I want and craving for them, but enduring, abandoning those things of the world, those desires of the world. And this is the neither pain nor pleasure, the spiritual neither pain nor pleasure that comes from a sense of balance, calm, stability, observation. And the recognitions that are flowing, different associations, or interpretations of the world, or they become thoughts, sort of recognition of, okay, that's somebody I know, that's somebody I don't know. It's good, that's bad, that's me, that's not, it's painful, that's pleasure, whatever. Sort of internal recognition of the object as a thing, as a meaning, as an association. You see the flickering of all that, different associations and views and perceptions, recognitions and associations. You see it all rising and passing away. Slowly, starts to get distance from it. See it. Oh, that's not me at all. It's just a set of associations that keeps changing. One sees one's impulses, one's attachments, one's pulls, one's fusions to the world, fusions to the mind, fusions to the body, speech, psyche, different aspects of fusing to the body and fusing to the feelings, to the thoughts, creating, binding oneself, sort of impulses that they leave behind, attached to something in the world or attached to something that associates with itself, but you're left with this impulse back to that object, impulse away from that. Whether it's internal one's body or outside in the world, sort of left with all of these attachments that keep pulling one in every direction. And when one sees like how fruitless this attachment, this process, this pulls, this sort of being yanked in every direction, and when one is able to stabilize a sense of observation separate from it, some sense of stability and awareness that's still, that's stable, the more it becomes clear these things are just pulling me around, mostly leading to my detriment, my pain, my suffering, my grief, tension. Pain of being separated from that which you love, being stuck with that which you don't know, not getting what you wish for. It's just these impulses pulling me around all the time. Slowing down, letting the impulses just peter out, dwindle in their energy. I keep peace to that. He's seeing that those impulses are there because they're pursuing some source of pleasure or the other, some source of hope for pleasure, hope for freedom. Whether it's craving for the sensuality or a craving for existence or even a craving for non-existence. He's looking for some enduring pleasure. The more one internalizes that these cravings, these impulses, are leading me to the opposite of that which they're seeking. They're seeking pleasure and they're leading me towards me. And sometimes initially that can feel really dispiriting because when one realizes that that's one's fueling the process of pain, the sources of pleasure that one knows or emotionally knows, habitually goes back to, can't offer that a long-term pleasure. They can offer a temporary pleasure that dissolves and leaves us depleted. An enduring pleasure that arises and passes away. The more deeply we've identified with that, we're left in a similar space of grief for having lost that state which we had identified. So bit by bit, we're coaching our craving out of believing that it's moving towards pleasure, and helping it understand that it's moving towards just this ongoing mass of burning. Burning of birth, the burning of aging, the burning of death, grief and mourning, pains. Being stuck with those we don't love, being separated from those we love, not getting what we wish for. These five masses, aggregates, these five parts of our experience that are constantly arising. We're just while there's still pleasure in the mix, it's not pleasure that's removed from this pain. It's part of the same cycle. It's part of the same. The identification with the pleasurable sensation is what gets us hooked. And when it turns inevitably painful, sooner or later, then we're stuck with the grief. The only way out of the burning pain is abandoning the burning pleasure. The more clearly we see that, the more we can coach our craving. Oh no, remember where that's going. That hurts. It looks like it's pleasurable, but then we attach to it and then we hurt. If moving towards that, the pleasure of existence, the pleasure of self, the pleasure of becoming, the pleasure of being, me. It only lasts as long as this concept of me sustains. And then when that concept of me falls apart, or those things that I've identified with fall apart, then I'm left with the same grief and pain, mourning. Since loss. So bit by bit, and sort of moving towards helping the craving see the more subtle burning. Already knows that might, and each time one sees this pain and registers, oh, okay, it's not the world is free from pleasure, but it's always stuck to this pain. There's no clever solution to getting a world that only has pleasure and never has the pain of loss, because everything that has the quality to come together has the quality to fall. So even these subtle states, even the wholesome states of kindness, compassion, happiness, observation, these sort of steady states, they still are subject to that arising and passing. These sort of increasing states of purity and focus, they're still subject to that arising and passing. They're still in this fabric of existence that's in this constant churn. And the Buddha was constantly pointing that there is a way out. There is an extinguishing of this burning. There is a cessation of this pain. There is an end to this. But the end only comes from starting to be identified with the phenomena that are arising in us. All ranges of it. So the Course is for it's just describing as this form, this feeling, these recognitions, these attachments, cravings. And then the most subtle are just our bare percepts, our bare perceptions, just the bare, unprocessed seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, mind. Perception of seeing, perception of hearing, perception of smelling, perception of taste, perception of body, perception of sights, sounds, smells, tastes. Qualities. So as one starts to let go of the coarser external forms, starts to let go of the internal feelings, starts to let go of recognitions, starts to let go of the impulses, moves towards just seeing the perceptions and the whole. It's like the beginning of the story, the point at which seeing is coming together with the perception of seeing. The point at which sounds are coming together with hearing and the perception. And as the attachments fade, as the craving fades, as the impulses fade, get weaker and weaker and weaker. The force, the glue, the binding from the perception to that material fabric of seeing sights, hearing sounds, gets weaker and weaker and weaker until they're unbound. So there's nothing bringing the craving was that glue, was that impulse, was that fuel, was that force that causes the percept to bind to the material. fields of materiality. Without that, and there's nowhere for it to land. There's nothing fueling its arising. So once it's undone, the fire's gone. It's come to the end of the cessation of pain. That's nevertheless the process of learning from our pain. At each moment, we experience our craving. We understand where the craving, what the craving's looking for. It's looking for happiness, peace, looking for freedom, looking in ways that are fueling our pain, our agitation, our binding. So one sees the psyche more and more clearly. The psyche sees more and more clearly the fruitlessness of that approach. And the potential for release through abandoning and craving. It just gets weaker and weaker and weaker. Until there's no more craving anymore. And that's what constitutes the complete release, the real extinguishing. There's no more craving anymore. There's nothing bringing us back into this world. The only thing we have is this attachment to a lifespan progresses in its due course before it's free completely. That process of an ongoing internalization, deepening of that wisdom, of that awareness, that deep knowing, as it penetrates deeper. It's a beautiful line from Buddha Buddha summarizes his whole teaching in a phrase. Nails it for some curious Brahmins who are looking to learn from him. Way out. See if I can remember it. Sutta Bhattavya Rupesu Chandaraga Vinodana Nibbana Padamachata Etanyaya Sata Dhamma Pasanta Chiyesada Yokirisataka. Translation of that is speaking to Hemaka, the Brahmin. Talking about all of the pleasant, pleasing, nice sights, sounds, or anything sense. Chandaraga Vinod, to gotten, to destroyed any excitement and infatuation with those pleasant pleasures of the senses. You've taken the steps towards extinguishing intentions. Once you remember this understanding, you're extinguishing those seen phenomena. She's referring to like the common phrase of Pali. This world, everything we're living in, this life. Once traversing the world, once traversed the world unstuck. Leave it there.